Hi.
Are you on?
Hello. My name is Michael McLaughlin. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, and I'll be serving as the moderator for today's event. Welcome to Rail Industry Day 2022 in Virginia. On behalf of not only my agency and DJ Statler and our Board of Directors of Vpra, but on behalf of Virginia Railway Express, Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and some other partners we'll be introducing later today as well. Thank you again for coming today. I'll be pausing for a few seconds while everyone comes on board and making sure this technology works. As we do so, I'll be letting you know how the day's going to go. This is our third industry day in a row. We've had others throughout the years when I was at DRPT. This is our third one in a row, and this is the second one that has been virtual. Hopefully in the future we'll be together. If you have questions during today's event, please write them into the chat that is on the system, and we'll be handling those at the end. So again, if you have questions, please write them in the chat, and we'll try to get to all the questions today. And if there's the time constraint, we don't get to all the questions, we will respond to you. Staff will respond to you in writing or with phone call. So with that, let's see, it's 10:02. We'll get going. Hopefully everyone will have joined by now. So next slide, please. So I talked about this a little bit. I'm going to hand it over to Jen DeBrule at DRPT here in a minute. And again, if you have any questions, whether it be about the process or about the projects and what we're providing today, feel free to write them in the chat and we will address them. Next slide. I'm going to hand it over to Jen. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Everything good? The next slide. Okay. Jen DeBrule, I'm the Acting Director of DRPT. I'm going to start off and just give you a little overview of our agency this morning. So our primary purpose is to move people and goods through public transportation, through rail, and through our commuter assistance programs. We do that through a lot of funding that flows through our agency. We allocated $983 million in fiscal year 22, but in addition to funding, we also partner with agencies statewide on doing studies and planning for both rail and transit, and looking at developing capital improvement projects, and also providing leadership and technical assistance to agencies around the state. So part of our purpose of being here today and being part of Rail Industry Day is the work that our agency does through our rail team and leading rail planning on a statewide basis, in addition to managing our freight funding programs. And for some more information on our consulting needs here at DRPT as it pertains to rail, I'm going to turn it over to Emily Stock, who is our Chief of Rail Transportation.
Thank you, Jen. Hi, this is Emily Stock, Chief of Rail Transportation for DRPT. I'll be focusing on one of our upcoming procurements on the rail team, the Rail General Planning Consultant Contract, aka Rail GPC. And Melissa Myers will be speaking a little bit later. She's our procurement director, and she'll be able to tell you a little bit about the ins and outs of the Rail GPC contract, some of the technical aspects. But I'll tell you more about what the Rail Division does and how we make use of our bench contracts. So we manage programs and initiatives that support freight investments and deliver data-driven planning recommendations and policies for both passenger and freight rail. So that's a mouthful. Dollars and cents for our next 6-year improvement program. We're talking about approximately $164 million in funding for our freight rail programs and $66 million for rail planning and statewide initiatives. And we want to make our Rail GPC contract available to other agencies as well, our grantees and other government agencies, to meet a variety of rail planning and program management, project development, environmental and evaluation needs. And we want to make sure that we're supporting agencies in the Commonwealth, especially as the bipartisan infrastructure law funding comes online. Next slide. So as far as rail duties go, obviously we've had some big changes with state rail initiatives lately. DRPT exists, and so does the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. So some of the duties that DRPT Rail Division have now moved on to VPRA. But as you can see from the chart here, DRPT continues its role with passenger and freight rail, including long-term planning studies for both passenger and freight. So we still have our existing freight programs that you're probably familiar with, and we do continue with the statewide rail plan and other long-range planning initiatives. Next page. And so aside from creating VPRA, that 2020 omnibus bill also created a streamlined allocation model for our freight programs. So we're still very active with the Rail Preservation Program, our new program, which is known as Freight, and Rail Industrial Access that gives us opportunities to partner with Virginia Economic Development Partnership on projects that create jobs and capital investment in the Commonwealth and have opportunities for rail. And then we also are, through rail planning, we're developing a statewide rail plan, and we are continuing to do some NEPA reevaluation work that's continued from the DC to RVA project that is now being implemented by VPRA. So there's a lot going on. There are a lot of opportunities for DRPT to further its mission in the Commonwealth and for us to have assistance from the consulting community. Next slide. So our existing GPC contract has some primary tasks: planning and project feasibility, financial, economic analysis, public involvement, and environmental analysis. So as I go through these slides, I'm going to talk about some of our active projects and how each one relates to those tasks that we have in the Rail GPC. But briefly, here's a list of how we've used our existing GPC contract. I'll start out with the graphic on the right-hand side. That is our rail database that's available on the DRPT website. That was spearheaded by the DRPT Rail Division, and we got consultant assistance to build it, and we need to continue to maintain that. It shows all of the rail yards, rail spurs. It's easy access so that you know if you're close to a railroad in Virginia, which railroad operator is in charge there. So we use it all the time, and hopefully you will too. It's something that we need to maintain. Statewide rail plan, of course, I'll talk about a little bit more. We do have long-range feasibility and planning studies that are initiated by the General Assembly, and sometimes those are initiated by local and regional entities. We also are continuing to work with VPRA on prioritizing statewide station plans and modernization. We work on BCA analyses for our programs, and we have to update that from time to time. Next slide. So I'll start going through projects specifically. So we are in the midst of doing a statewide rail plan right now, but we'll have to do another one in the next 4 years. This is a really comprehensive report. It ties in with our statewide long-range transportation plan, VTrans, and we need this rail plan in order to apply for federal funding for rail projects. If an initiative is covered in the rail plan, that opens us up to the potential for getting federal funding. Of course, that's important now more than ever. It includes project lists on a 4-year and 20-year planning horizon, so it goes beyond the 6-year improvement program. We have lots of data points and metrics that FRA requires, Federal Railroad Administration requires year to year as we now this is our fourth rail plan that we're putting together, so we can compare things year to year in Virginia and also compare ourselves against other states. We also, as part of this rail plan, and this is something that's newer for us, with the change in ownership and control of some of the rail infrastructure in Virginia and operations, we are establishing some broad policies for rail, both freight and passenger, and those can guide some of the implementation that VPRA is doing. So we work very closely with VPRA on this. Next slide. So Short Line Preservation Fund, I'm switching gears now to our freight programs. This is one of our oldest programs. It supports short line railways in the state that provide last mile service for freight customers who may not have the types of volume that would attract a Norfolk Southern or a CSX. But we recognize the benefits of freight rail in Virginia, and we support these short lines for what they bring to the Commonwealth. And the GPC connection here, we update our economic analysis and benefits analysis every few years for this program, and we want to continue to get assistance from the consultant community to do that in future years. Next slide. So the freight program, this is the first year that we're actually making use of this. It's an acronym. It's Freight Rail Enhancements to Increase Goods and Highway Throughput. Making sure that the freight network is bottleneck free, and that we're making the most use of the infrastructure we have by making small enhancements as needed. We work with both Class 1 railroads and short lines on this program, and we have an extensive benefit cost analysis that we actually update on a very regular basis as economic conditions warrant. And so that's a little screenshot of our BCA right there on the screen. And one of the things that, since our agency is relatively new, created in the 1990s, we have now more data to look at now that we've had these freight funding programs over the years. And so working with consultants to analyze some of that and make sure that our freight programs are on track to benefit the Commonwealth economy and to the greatest extent is something that we definitely strive for and will continue to work on. Next slide. Rail Industrial Access, this is a program that we work closely with VEDP on, and it's for companies that are looking to build rail spurs in order to further growth and jobs and capital investment. And so as in the last 4 fiscal years, Rail Industrial Access projects have diverted nearly 114,000 trucks from Virginia highways and created over 2,800 new jobs. So that's a big boon for the Commonwealth, of course. Next slide. And so these are some of the planning studies that we've done over the last couple of years. These have come from assignments from the General Assembly. I also anticipate that as the years go by, that we will get inquiries for expanded rail access, possibly for intermodal facilities, transload facilities on the freight side, and so we want to be prepared for those as well. This is an example of some of the planning studies that we've done recently. Next slide. And what's new? So this is what we're looking at into the future. this is some of the work that especially on the planning side we're doing. We are active, the Rail Division is active with our partner states to the north, to the south really, and DC, through the Southeast Rail Corridor Commission. That group leads an effort to connect states across the Southeast through passenger and freight rail, very active with opportunities through the bipartisan infrastructure law, and our partner states or our neighboring states are definitely going after those funds, and so it's good to coordinate with them to understand where we fit in the big picture and how we can have the most effect. We're also active with the Freight Advisory Committee. That's a statewide committee to work on freight issues and making things more efficient. So it gives us some insight on planning for freight as well. And then, of course, we are going to be all in on finding opportunities in Virginia for the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's a lot of money out there for rail funding, and we know that Vpra is going to be pursuing that, and you'll hear about that from Vpra folks today. But also on the planning and freight side, DRPT is going to be looking for opportunities there as well. That we'll definitely be looking for assistance on. So that is my presentation for DRPT Rail Division. I can pass things back over to Michael McLaughlin.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate it. I'll talk a little more about VPRA now. Next slide. So for those who aren't familiar, the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, we have talked about its past industry days, but the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority was created by the 2020 General Assembly and Omnibus Bill. As you can see, it was given various powers, and I think the one most important today is the power to design and build rail facilities, rail infrastructure. As Emily did mention, the bipartisan infrastructure law, we are enabled to be a direct recipient of U.S. DOT grants, and we will be pursuing those opportunities. We also, with our enabling legislation, we can own rail assets in right-of-way, and I think a lot of you are aware that we have had some major agreements with CSX and Norfolk Southern to own both rail assets in right-of-way, and which we'll get into with regard to some projects later on. We do not operate passenger and commuter rail service. We leave that up to operators such as Amtrak and VRE, and you'll hear from VRE later on today. We are governed by a 15-member board, 12 of whom are appointed by the governor, and 3 are ex officio members, one who is in the management, Ken DeBrule, as the director of DRPT, and the other ex officio are Amtrak and VRE. Next slide, please. So we have a program called Transform Rail in Virginia, and that started with the agreements between Virginia, CSX, Amtrak, and VRE that were initially announced back in December of 2019. We finalized definitive agreements with those parties in almost exactly a year ago, at the end of March in 2021, with Secretary Buttigieg was on hand when we signed those agreements up in Alexandria. We, at the same time, we've been negotiating with Norfolk Southern to expand passenger rail from the Washington, D.C. area down to Southwest Virginia. And in January of 2022, we finalized the definitive agreements with Norfolk Southern. That's for a second round trip to Roanoke and extension to New River Valley of our Amtrak service. But we are awaiting some other due diligence, including Surface Transportation Board filing. We hope to have those done by the early summer. As you can see from the map, Transform Rail in Virginia includes much of Virginia. So, and it does include most of the projects here today. There are some other projects that are some legacy projects that are also on the map. But Transform Rail in Virginia, we believe, is a way to provide more options for people in Virginia via train and via Amtrak, VRE, and other options. Next slide. So I know this page is hard to see on the PowerPoint. You can find it on Transform Rail in Virginia website. But this lists out the Washington Richmond projects that are part of the CSX agreement between Virginia and CSX, starting in the north, Long Bridge, and going on down south all the way to There's a project in Hanover, just north of Richmond. And we're going to be going through most of the major projects here with staff here in a few minutes. Also want to reiterate, though, that, again, it does include purchase of right-of-way. Virginia will be purchasing, we have an easement now, and when we're finished with the survey, we'll have ownership of the right-of-way on the east side, south of Franconia, and the west side, north of Franconia. And that will allow us to build out what eventually will hopefully be a 4-track corridor into the Spotsylvania territory and additional tracks from Spotsylvania to Richmond. For those who aren't familiar, the Spotsylvania territory is the end of the VRE territory. We also do own some right-of-way from, we'll be soon owning right-of-way from Petersburg to North Carolina, and we do own right-of-way from Dowswell to Clifton Forge that we call it as part of the Bucking Branch service. Next slide. The rail agreement with Norfolk Southern that I mentioned adds a second train to Roanoke and extends to New River Valley. This is just a more in-depth map of that, so you can see. Also, this is also on our website as well. And there are 3 major quarter improvement projects: Knoxville to Calverton, Roanoke Yard, and train service to New River Valley, and the station and platform and track that needs to be built there. Norfolk Southern will be administering the Knoxville to Calverton and Roanoke Yard projects. Next slide. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kate. And before I do want to mention that we have hired a new Longbridge project manager, Charlene Cleveland. She's with us here today. She just started in the last week or so, and she'll be heavily involved. And Kate has been our director of planning, leading the efforts on Longbridge for quite a few years now. Kate, take it away.
Hi, everyone. As Michael said, I'm the director of planning. I handle the NEPA work and planning work for Vpra. I'm happy to be with you today to talk about Longbridge. So for those of you unfamiliar with the Longbridge location, the map below belies the project and the project limits. On the right side of the screen is the District of Columbia beyond the Potomac River, and on the left is Virginia in Arlington, Virginia. The project has been underway since 2011, and most recently, a NEPA document was issued for the project in September 22. Another highlight from the last winter is that we completed 15% design back in January, so we're proud to have that accomplishment. I won't read the bullets on the slide, but you can see that it's a capacity constraint. It's quite a complex project given the jurisdiction and the waters that we're crossing, both on land in the NPS property area and within the district itself, very close to, in proximity to private properties and other major assets in the district, just south of the monumental core. Next slide. Here's the general project timeline for Longbridge, and it's really been going on again since 2011, but most recently, these are the highlights for the project. We're in the middle column here with preliminary engineering, and I just mentioned that we advanced the project design to 15% design back in January. We've been doing quite a lot of work since last March, and we're looking forward to pursuing 30% design, draft 30% design coming up this fall. In addition, one of the things we'll be working on is the project delivery. Everyone always asks us, do you know the project delivery? And we are not quite sure yet, but we will be able to figure that as we move forward through the design process. I think Michael had a quick highlight for folks regarding that work. Michael?
Take it away.
Okay, there's a construction delivery that we have a request for information to the industry for. I believe that's coming up later this spring or the summer into the fall. So be looking out for that for the Longbridge project.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Next slide. And with that, I'll hand it over to Todd Hopkins. Todd?
All right, thank you, Kate. Good morning, everybody. My name is Todd Hopkins. I'm a project manager with Vpra, and I'll be talking about 2 projects this morning, and I'll start things off with the Alexandria 4th Track project, which is also known as AF to RO. Now, AF to RO involves the design and construction of 6 miles of 4th mainline track between the AF interlocking, which is just south of Alexandria Station, to the RO interlocking, which is near the southern bank of the Potomac River. This portion of the rail network is a known bottleneck area. We've got 5 tracks that converge at this location to 3 tracks, and they carry all train traffic through Alexandria and across the Potomac River. And that's a big reason why we're doing both this AFRO project and the Long Bridge project, and that's to address known capacity issues for this area of the rail network. There are 2 rail stations within this project segment, Crystal City in the north and then Alexandria Union Station in the south. VRE does have projects planned for both of these stations. Both VPRA and VRE are coordinating with one another on their respective projects. I'll also note that Amtrak has a project under development to design and construct a station at Crystal City, and that everybody, VPRA, VRE, we're both coordinating with Amtrak on that effort. The project, the AFRO project, did receive a $45 million federal fast lane grant from USDOT. That's being administered by the Federal Railroad Administration. And as part of the Transforming Rail in Virginia program, between Virginia and CSX will convey an existing track on the west side of the corridor to Virginia once the project is complete. And I'll also note that this is one of the first project segments to come out of the DC to RVA project effort and also the Transforming Rail in Virginia program. Next slide. So project status and next steps. So the DC to RVA Tier 2 Environmental Impact Statement was completed in September of 2019. The AF to RO project segment was part of that project. FRA did issue a record of decision in September of 2019, and that action essentially allowed us to achieve environmental clearance for the AF to RO project segment. Also of note, preliminary engineering plans were developed as part of the DC to RVA project effort, inclusive of the AF to RO segment. The AF to RO project is fully funded. The budget's $210 million. It is a mix of both federal and state funds. We did complete as part of AF to RO, we completed an early works project late last year, and that was a crash wall at Airport Access Road. And we were able to, fortunately, team on that one with the Virginia Department of Transportation. They managed construction on that one for us and did a great job with it. So for AF to RO, CSX will be leading final design and construction. Final design is underway. It's anticipated to be complete by the middle of 2023, and construction is estimated for a mid-2026 completion. And that one, I'll just note that we're planning a project delivery of design bid build. Next slide. All right, the Franconia Springfield Bypass Project. So this project involves the design and construction of a bypass bridge structure just south of the Franconia Springfield station, which is served by both VRE and WMATA. And the purpose of this project is to basically allow passenger trains, commuter trains to serve stations on the west side of the corridor north of this location, and to allow passenger commuter trains to serve stations south of this location on the east side of the corridor. So it's a crossing there that allows us to access stations, whether it's on the west, north of this location, and on the east, south of this location. And a major benefit for this project is to reduce conflicts between intercity passenger, commuter, and freight traffic. All right, so the Franconia Bypass Project status and next steps. So we have completed concept level design for this project. We have achieved environmental clearance through obtaining a categorical exclusion, and that was obtained outside of DC to RVA. The project budget is $241 million. That is a mix of funding sources, both state and federal. VPRA is currently in the process of a procurement activity right now. We're working to secure a consultant to perform preliminary engineering for the project. That procurement activity is underway. This project will coordinate heavily with the CSX-led Franconia Lorton Third Track project, again, which is being led by CSX We will coordinate with them on that. The Franconia bypass project design for that, or at least preliminary engineering design, is being led by VPRA. We anticipate beginning design on this project in the middle of this year of 2022, and construction is expected to begin in 24 with completion in 26. And with that, I will hand it over to Fayad.
Thank you, Todd. Good morning. Fayad Constantine here, Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, engineering manager. In keeping with our theme of, just extending the rail corridor and relieving the congestion and adding capacity, I'll describe the Franconia to Lorton third track mainline project. Would not read the bullets to you, but just to summarize quickly where we are, this is also a CSX-led project. It begins on the north end at just north of the Franconia Springfield VRE station, extends to just north of One Crossing. Again, with coordination and collaboration being a heavy theme throughout our presentation and in our industry day today. It also includes a VRE station within the limits of this project as well. When paired, this is a CSX-led project, and when paired with the Franconia bypass project, we would add a total of 8 miles of third main. So it extends the third main from the Springfield area all the way down to the just north of the Occoquan River crossing. The construction that would be done, the design and construction that is led by CSX would add 7 miles of that additional mainline track. The project, as described on the screen, is composed of several project elements broken up by funding sources, specifically the Franconia to Lorton segment, which is a phase 1 delivery, the Newington Road undergrade railroad bridge, which is also a phase 1 delivery, and 2 accelerated phase 3 projects, notably the Lorton to Route 1 and Lorton to Route 1 segment and the Route 1 undergrade bridge crossing. The targeted construction completion for all these projects are 2026. The budget amounts that you see on the screen are all in year of expenditure numbers. So these are, they include everything that we contemplate for the projects for the entire life. So I just wanted to put that in context. Next slide. To round out the portfolio of phase 1 and phase 2 projects, I'll describe our siting projects. There are 6 siting projects strategically located throughout the corridor for phase 1, phase 2 delivery. The sightings will also be led by CSX. Currently, we are developing project-specific contracts with CSX to kick these off. The phase 1 sightings are sightings A, B, and C, with a design schedule of 2022 through 2025 and a anticipated construction schedule of 2024 through 2026. And the phase 2 sightings, D, E, and F, again with a design schedule of 2025 through 2027 and a construction schedule of 2027 through 2030. The all-in budgeted dollars and year of expenditure amounts are $470 million for this project. Of course, why are we doing these projects? Again, if you notice, we continue to add third main line throughout the VRE corridor specifically, and upon completion of all of our sightings through the end of phase 2, we'd have a nearly dedicated third main line all the way to Spotsylvania, absent some of the bridges which will be tackled specifically in later phases. The main crux for this, again, common theme throughout, to enhance capacity and fluidity, to add that flexibility and increase our service for passenger traffic. Next slide. So while the work as seen here ends in Hanover County, there'll be other future work in the Richmond area, which Kate will also be leading through project development. And now Kate will describe some of the Norfolk Southern projects in the New River Valley.
And Kate, if I may, use moderator's card to jump in here real quick. Just want to remind people what I talked about earlier regarding New River Valley in our deal with Norfolk Southern. VPRA is responsible for the work from Salem to New River Valley, and Norfolk Southern will be responsible for the Milksville to Calverton project I mentioned and the Roanoke Yard project. So Kate's going to cover the work in the New River Valley area. Also want to mention as well that we've talked about the various phases with construction. Those do correspond with phases that start with service. So keep in mind that if we have a contract and it says service, it says construction must be complete by 2026, that's really important to us because we need service. The service can't start until a lot of these projects are done. So phase 1 projects, when those are done in 2026, service can begin. That's one of the most important things for the Commonwealth. And also with regard to the projects Kate's going to mention here, when her project is done, then we'll be able to begin extension to New River Valley. So with that, Kate, take it away.
Sure, thank you. I'm here to talk to you about the New River Valley passenger station. This slide illustrates where the passenger station is in Southwest Virginia. So Michael showed you a slide of where the NS line and the agreements that pertain to that line are. And this is where we completed a feasibility study. We're completing a feasibility study this spring regarding the station location. The image on the left side of your screen illustrates the study area between Blacksburg and Christiansburg we took a look at to determine what station location is feasible. On the right side of your screen, you'll see the actual station study areas themselves that we considered in terms of impacts and screened out viable options to move forward to a NEPA phase. If you go to the next slide, you'll learn a little bit more about the study timeline. So as you can see, I mentioned that we're completing the feasibility study where we determined that two locations adjacent to the New River Valley Mall or uptown Christiansburg were the best viable options in terms of the least amount of impacts at a feasibility high-level study phase. We'll move that forward to a NEPA study and this summer and fall. And we will further develop concept development information and design regarding the impacts of those station locations and get to a preferred alternative. You'll see those overlapping to 2024, and we hope to be in construction and delivering a station in New River Valley by 2026. Next slide. I'll throw it over to our colleague at NCDOT, Jason, to tell you more about the Richmond to Raleigh corridor. Jason?
Thank you, Kate. As Kate mentioned, I'm the Rail Division Director at North Carolina Department of Transportation. Really want to say thank you to our friends and partners at the VPRA and the DRPT and VRE for allowing us to take a brief moment here in your industry day to speak on a project we've been working together on for quite some time. Next slide, please. We call this, the project is the Richmond to Raleigh corridor. It's the 162 miles that connects those two cities in our respective state and Commonwealth. And we call it the missing link because really it's the corridor that connects the services that Virginia has been working so intently on in the Commonwealth. And on our end, the Raleigh to Charlotte corridor has been what we've been working on very intently. The whole aspect of this is part of what we call the Southeast corridor, which was something Emily Stock mentioned earlier in the presentation. A group of states extending from the District of Columbia all the way south to Florida that are working on a comprehensive network. This project really is that connection between our two states that allows this network to flourish through a new high-capacity, high-performance corridor. In 1992, this network of corridors was established as the Southeast Corridor. We began in North Carolina working on the first level Tier 1 document back in 2002 that selected the route between Washington, D.C. and Charlotte. And we followed that up immediately with beginning work on a Tier 2 NEPA document that established a completed NEPA process for the Richmond to Raleigh segment. which includes the piece over the partially abandoned S line between Petersburg and Raleigh. That NEPA document was completed for a 110-mile-an-hour speed corridor, which would make it one of the higher performing corridors in the Southeast. And really does, and the completion of that NEPA work positions the project for significant federal funding for future design right-of-way construction. Taking a lead from Virginia, we began to look at acquisition of corridors as well, specifically the S line, and applied for and won a CRISI grant in 2020 to acquire the piece between Ridgeway, North Carolina, where Virginia's ownership ends, and Raleigh. Moving into the next phase here, we've actually are advancing the project by leaning heavily into the next level of engineering. We've applied for over $57 million in federal PE funds, first under the fiscal year 2021 CRISI program, and also the fiscal year State of Good Repair programs as well. So that $57 million actually contributes to over $71 million in engineering and survey work that we're anticipating coming forward. Next slide, please. Just some updates here on what we're actually doing on this project right now. We have, as I mentioned, corridor acquisition underway. Virginia is well advanced in corridor acquisition, and North Carolina is not very far behind. We've been working collaboratively on service development with both Virginia and Amtrak. In anticipation of winning the grant, we've already begun the necessary aerial photography and survey activities necessary to ensure we're developing the digital terrain models and supporting data needed to begin the design. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we've applied for the funding. Again, this is for 162 miles of engineering and survey on the rail corridor and 80 miles of work on the roadway systems in our respective states. In North Carolina, we have broad community engagement ongoing. We've got a series of communities that are already engaged in the project and looking at developing their communities around the project. We're planning for future grants, as we've mentioned before, under bipartisan infrastructure law, and identifying matching funds. And later this spring or early summer, we intend to have a project industry day and invite our colleagues from Virginia to come as well, and to speak on the specific procurement opportunities for this project. Excited about the project and working with the industry. We really appreciate the engineering and contracting industry and all they do in support of major infrastructure like this. And thank you for your time. I'll turn it back over to Virginia.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. We'll hand it over to Rich Dalton now from VRE.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Hope everybody is safe and healthy. Next slide. What I just wanted to go through the first couple of slides here before I hand it off is just for those that aren't too familiar with VRE. VRE, of course, is essentially a brand. We're actually owned by two parent commissions in Northern Virginia. One is the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission and the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. And from those two commissions, folks are selected to serve on our operations board. And our operations board does the primary coordination of our service, provides some fiscal oversight and just general governance oversight. Next slide. Again, just for those that might not be too familiar with VRE, we do operate primarily in the Northern Virginia region. Our southernmost station starts in Spotsylvania County. We do parallel I-95 on our Fredericksburg line, which is a lot of the previous discussion about transforming rail in Virginia really impacts this segment of our service area. And then we venture out from the western part of the region with a station out in the western or actually in Prince William County that starts at the Broad Run Station and Airport. And of course, as a traditional commuter rail operation, we service commuters from the into the central business district, which is Alexandria, Crystal City, LaFont, Union Station. Next slide. I just wanted to, from a overall capital improvement program, this slide depicts what our 6-year improvement program looks like going out, starting in fiscal year 2023. Total amount, just a little bit over $1.1 billion. And as you can see, there's a large portion of the capital improvement program that is funded. We do have a segment of our capital improvement project or program under expansion that is not funded, but it's primarily for rolling stock that is projected in the outer years of our capital improvement program. Next slide. And so I've got Dallas Richards and Christine Hefner here with me, and I'm going to talk to Dallas first, and he's going to go over some projects that we currently have under design and construction, and then Christine's going to follow that up with some other exciting projects that we have going on. So with that, let me toss to Dallas first.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad to be here with another industry day. If you would, please, next slide. One more slide. Because they couldn't be with here, because we're doing this virtually, and I think a lot of us hope this is the last one we do virtually, I wanted to introduce our project managers from VRE. Many of them I think they're all here with us today virtually and with us, but I want to point out that there are a few new faces to our team, but Jason Bortz has joined the VRE in the last few months, Kip Foster, Chris Coker since the time of our, since the pandemic, the deal, and then Nick Ruiz, our newest staff member who's joined with Christine and Christine's staff as well on the planning side. I want to point out with this slide, when you do receive this presentation, each of the projects designated under the project manager is a hyperlink to the VRE project website for that particular project. If there's something we don't cover here today, if you want more information, you're welcome to visit the website or reach out to any of the respective project managers. Thank you. The next slide, please. As we speak here today, I wanted to really touch on the past, the present, and the future of VRE in the sense of our program of delivering projects. And first is the past, if you will. These are all projects that were introduced in this forum to the audience here today, the construction and consulting community. The first of which is Quantico station improvements currently under construction today, building foundations to erect the stair and elevator towers for a new pedestrian bridge and platform. The rolling road extension currently under construction, anticipate completion within the next few months, actually this spring. And third is our life cycle and overhaul upgrade facility, arguably one of the largest projects in VRE history, a 33,000 square foot facility for vehicle maintenance. And very excited, all of these are very exciting projects. You'll note that these photos come from our actual construction video coverage where we have a day-to-day time-lapse video that's available, and you can actually visit the website to see these projects. All very exciting and part of our past successes that we want to celebrate as we move forward. With that, next slide, please. Some of the present, if you will, most immediate works that are coming to this community very soon. The first and foremost is the Fredericksburg Station rehabilitation. Through rehabilitation, we will be extending what was the original platforms, both east and west platforms at the facility, adding stair grade down to the parking lot where many of our passengers can travel, and also doing what I refer to as dental concrete repairs, coming back to complete some of the work that we began in 2010, 2011, with rehabilitating the concrete on the structure. This project will take place, back the IFB is imminent. I will offer that. It's been board approved and all materials are in procurement as we speak. So this project should be, the IFB may be as early as soon as today, but this week we believe. And excited to move forward with this project as well earlier this year. Next slide, please. Another exciting one is the Manassas Park parking garage. We've been working on this one for some time, and part of this was moving the facility closer to a development underway by the city itself. If you've been to Manassas Park recently, you would have seen a lot of work going on there. We're building a new parking garage with over 500 spaces, with a pedestrian bridge from the garage over and down to our facility there, our station at Manassas Park. Final design and permitting underway. Permitting with the city, site permit, building permit are underway as we speak, working with our design team. And the construction IFB is imminent at sometime Q2 this year, so look for that. With the projected calendar, in the 24-month construction period, we're looking like this one may be delivered in 2024, and getting this in service is very exciting. And next slide, finally, for Crystal City Station, as you may remember, we are basically relocating the new station 300-400 yards to the south of the existing location near the water park, which is the entrance you see here, will serve as our north entrance. We're working very closely with our partners, including CSX and the state. You saw a slide earlier about the 4th track, Alexandria 4th track, and this being the northernmost terminus of that, just south of RO interlocking. This is an exciting project where we're going to be building adjacent to the 4th track, soon to be 4th track, if you will, and connecting on the south end with our partners at JBG Smith and others. So very much looking forward to this one. Upcoming solicitations for this project will include the RFP for construction management and IFP for construction. We do reserve the potential for a CMGC approach for this one, as we have talked about before with Alexandria Station, which we are moving forward as well. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Christine.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Christine Hefner. I'm VRE's Manager of Project Development, and I oversee short and long range planning for VRE, as well as project development planning for capital projects. I work along with Nick Ruiz, who's the planning program manager. Next slide, please. One of the projects that just recently last year completed the development phase is the Broad Run expansion. It's currently in final design, which is being managed by Adil Meister-Walla. We also have property acquisition underway through our general planning consulting contract. And just to note that GPC is a primary means of procurement for planning and project development, initial design efforts for VRE. Our operations board just recently awarded a recompete of that GPC contract last month. The work at Broad Run is a major expansion of both the station and the maintenance and storage facility, including a fairly significant expansion of the station footprint to accommodate longer-term expected facility needs for equipment storage, as well as the expansion of the station and the capacity of that facility. The next procurement activity for that project will be design, and it's anticipated to be starting construction in 2024. Next slide. We have several projects that are in the development phase, totaling about $100 million of our capital improvement program. One of the largest projects that's currently in development is the LaFont Station and 4th Track project. That project is currently in the alternatives analysis and conceptual design phase. We initiated that work last year and expect to be completed later this year. The next step in that project and advancing the preliminary design for that will be the environmental review and PE efforts, which we expect will begin later in 2022. Currently, we are expecting that the preliminary engineering and NEPA work would be completed through our GPC contract. This project's being closely coordinated with the Long Bridge project. It joins the Long Bridge project at the LaFont interlocking and extends through the VRE station area at LaFont to the Virginia interlocking at the northern end of the railroad corridor. This is also a major station reconstruction and relocation project that will allow for the construction of an island platform that can be served by the existing third track as well as the future fourth track. The design of the fourth track is also included in the VRE project. We expect that final design will begin in 2023 and then construction in 2025 with a completion currently projected for 2028. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Christine. I'm going to hand it over to Melissa Myers at DRPT.
Good morning, everybody. I was getting ready to talk with my mute button on, so excuse me. I hope everybody's having a great morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about the upcoming procurement for our rail GPC. Go ahead, next slide, please. So this is our proposed schedule. At this time, we are set to go live on April 1st. Our pre-proposal conference should be around April 13th. And the next dates are, of course, can change at any time. So oral presentations, deadline for receipt of proposals, we're looking around May 6th. And then, of course, oral presentations if needed, negotiations, and proposed contract award, hopefully beginning of July of 2022. Again, those dates may change, but we're definitely set to go live on April 1st. Next slide. So here are some important websites. If you take anything away from what I speak to you about today, it's these websites. In order to do business with the state, to go into contract with the state, you must be registered in EVA. So make sure, if you are not already, that you get registered with the state. Also, Swam Certification and becoming certified with DSBSD is very important, and Richard will speak more about that soon. And then we have adopted VDOT's conflict of interest policy. So if you want to read up on that, there's a link there as well for you. Next slide. And that is done for me. Here are, again, my email address if you have any questions. Again, regarding the VDOT conflict of interest, please email me directly if you have any questions there. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you. I guess it's not on to Kristen next. Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks. Yep, thanks, Melissa. Kristen?
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning. Kristen Nutter, I'm VRE's Manager of Purchasing and Contract Administration. Next slide, please. The intent today is to highlight a number of upcoming procurement opportunities, but before doing so, I just wanted to touch briefly on the advertising methods that we utilize for our various solicitations. The first being the VRE website. All of our invitations for bid, requests for proposals, requests for information, even our requests for quotes for small purchases are advertised here. So I would encourage all interested contractors to monitor our website frequently to ensure that you're aware of upcoming procurement opportunities. We also used our LinkedIn website, our LinkedIn site, in order to promote solicitations when they're advertised. And then, as Melissa touched on, the importance of EVA. In parallel with our website, we do advertise on EVA, make every effort to identify various commodity codes so that we can target a broad range of vendors, including specialized subs, so that there can be an opportunity for networking and opportunity for partnering on many solicitations. Next slide, please. In terms of upcoming procurement opportunities, Dallas Richard touched on a couple of these earlier in the presentation, the first being the Fredericksburg Station Rehabilitation Project. We do very soon expect to advertise an invitation for bids, which included the expansion of the east and west platform, as well as repair work there, and repair work to include also the bridge structures. Dallas did also mention our Manassas Park project that the the construction of about a 500 space parking garage, as well as the pedestrian bridge. So the first need there is our construction management for that project. We'll bring on a consultant to oversee the pre-construction phase, on-site oversight of the project, and then to close out the project. So we would anticipate a request for proposals for that opportunity to be let soon, and then followed by an actual invitation for bid for the actual construction of the project, again, including the garage, the pedestrian bridge, and some additional facilities. Also working through a request for proposals right now for program management consulting support. This would be someone to bring on as a overseer for our project delivery, augmentation of on-site staff. We're looking for tasks or support in the areas of construction, estimating, scheduling, some procurement support, overview of design plans and specifications. So that's a big opportunity for us and one that we hope to advertise soon. Transitioning into operations and mechanical, the first two solicitations here are related to oversight or repair of our locomotive fleet. The first, the master controllers, we currently have an invitation for bid that's on the street right now, with bids due by 2 p.m. on the 13th of April for new master controllers. And then the final one here on the list, the forklift trucks, we will have an invitation for bid forthcoming to acquire 5 new forklifts to be used at our warehouse facility and our maintenance and storage facilities. Next slide, please. Targeting a few other areas here, facilities maintenance. We would have an invitation for bid upcoming for overhaul or modernization of our elevator at the Woodbridge station, as well as an invitation for bid for replacement of the tactile warning strips at several of our stations. And for those who aren't familiar, that's sort of the yellow textured strip at the edge of the platform to denote the transition from the platform to the track surface. In the area of finance and accounting, we have an RFP for bond trustee services, as well as an RFP for banking services. At this point, we would anticipate that likely being a joint solicitation, that is the banking services, with our parent commission, PRTC. And then absolutely last but not least, a number of IT-related projects upcoming for upgrade of the infrastructure for the security cameras at our yard facilities, and then for replacement of a variable messaging system at our stations. We did a proof of concept project last year for upgrade of those, the VMS at Fredericksburg and Alexandria, and we'll be using the lessons learned there to roll out a larger solicitation for the other stations. Next slide, please. We're very fortunate to have Richard Gordon here with us today. He'll be presenting in a few minutes from Small Business and Supplier Diversity. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining the DBE and SWAM programs, as Richard can do that a lot more justice, but did want to emphasize the importance of participation in VRE's contracts. Particularly for our FTA assisted contracts, we have a goal of 14.1% for the utilization of DBE. And the last time we came together for Industry Day, that goal was 11.3%. So you can see that's a pretty sizable increase and has a lot to do with the volume and the types of projects that we have upcoming. So we're excited. We have a pretty ambitious goal, and we need your help in supporting that goal. And then in terms of SWAM, we do not have a specific SWAM goal. As part of our master agreement with DRPT, we're asked to promote opportunities among SWAM, so we do utilize the Small Business and Supplier Diversity website in order to find those opportunities and to kind of help to promote networking with SWAM. And then when it's time to submit bids and proposals, we have various forms that we do ask those prime contractors to complete to identify who on their team is a certified DBE, a certified SWAM, and we look at that as part of the evaluation process. So at this point, I'd like to introduce John Kostinick of Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I am John Kostinick, Director of Procurement with Vpra. I joined the team 6 weeks ago, and I really look forward to procuring Vpra needs as we transform rail in Virginia. As of this morning, Vpra's procurement policies are still being established, so I cannot share details yet. But as you heard from a lot of my peers earlier, we have exciting projects and works are on the horizon, and we really look forward to procuring for these projects in the future. Until our procurement policies are adopted, I expect a fair amount of questions, and even maybe today we have some questions about our procurement process and details for each project. At this time, I just can't share with the community our procurement plans, but please reach out to me, and my email address is listed there. Please reach out to me if you have any procurement questions or inquiries. With the projects that were mentioned earlier as part of Transforming Rail in Virginia, VPRA is expecting to partner with a wide spectrum of businesses in the Commonwealth, and we anticipate opportunities for businesses to partner with us either as a prime or a sub. As my peers, procurement peers mentioned a few seconds ago, as part of our contracts, VPRA also anticipates asking our vendors and their subcontractors to provide for significant participation with diverse businesses, DBE and SBSD certified businesses, be it through partnerships, joint ventures, subcontracts, or other contractual opportunities as a way to increase the number of substantial long-term business relationships with diverse vendors. Our partners at SBSD, Richard Gordon, he's here today. They currently, as of this morning, have 13,200 diverse suppliers certified by the Commonwealth. And Richard Gordon, SBSD's Transportation Business Development Specialist, will further discuss SBSD certification.
Thanks, John. Richard, hand it over to you.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, John. Next slide. So I'm with the Virginia Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity. Our agency's mission is to promote access to the Commonwealth of Virginia's contracting opportunities and ensure fairness in the procurement process. Next slide. So how do we do that? We have four basic areas four basic services that we provide. We provide the certification for small, minority, and women-owned businesses, which is our SWAM program. That's the state of Virginia's small business program. And then we have the DBE certification, or Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Certification, which is a program required by the U.S. Department of Transportation for all transportation agencies that receive federal assistance from the U.S. Department of Transportation. We also do a certain amount of business development and outreach, which is what I'm doing here today, to talk to you about the services that we provide and the assistance that we can provide to you. We do that through workshops and other kinds of activities to help you grow and develop your business. We provide capital or access to capital through the Virginia Small Business Financing Authority, and we also advocate for legislation and other policies that help to improve the state of business for small businesses in Virginia. Next slide. So SWAM certification. SWAM stands for Small Woman-Owned and Minority-Owned Businesses. The key point here is small business. So under the SWAM program, the main point is that you're a small business that's in business for profit, and there is no additional credit for being a woman or a minority. So the primary focus of this program is small business. It is the Commonwealth of Virginia Small Business Program, which means that all of the guidelines and all of the regulations for the SWAM program were created by Virginia state government. The primary focus of the SWAM program is to enhance procurement and contracting opportunities for SWAM businesses participating in state-funded projects. So the SWAM program applies to all state agencies and the state universities. Next slide. SWAM certification. So what is a SWAM business? A SWAM business is a small business with no more than 250 employees, or the key point here is or no more than $10 million in annual gross receipts averaged over a 3-year period. A woman-owned business, in order to be considered a woman-owned business under the SWAM program, the company must be at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more women who are citizens or legal resident aliens of the United States. Same thing for minority. In order for the business to be considered a minority-owned business, it must be at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more minorities who are U.S. citizens or legal residents. Under the SWAM program, we also have a category known as micro businesses. And so under the micro business category, a firm can have no more than 25 employees and no more than $3 million in annual gross receipts averaged over a 3-year period. Next slide. DBE. And so DBE stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. It is a federally mandated program for state and local transportation entities that receive funding from the U.S. Department of Transportation. The purpose of the DBE program is to increase the participation of certified DBEs in federally funded or federally assisted contracts or projects. Next slide. So the DBE program, what does the DBE program apply to? And typically the DBE program applies to state transportation entities such as VDOT and MDOT. It also applies to transit agencies, whether they be local or regional transit agencies. And a good example in the Northern Virginia area is WMATA. When you look at airports, the DBE program applies to airports, and typically those projects are runway or aviation safety type projects. Next slide. So qualifying as a DBE. In order to qualify as a DBE, a business must be at least 51% owned and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And under the DBE regulations, the regulations presume that the following disadvantaged groups are presumed to be socially and economically disadvantaged. Next slide. Again, additionally, to qualify for DBE certification, in order to prove that you're disadvantaged, you as the individual owner or the owners, whether it's one owner or two owners or three owners that make up the 51% ownership of the company, those owners must each provide us with a personal financial statement. And that personal financial statement has to prove that their personal net worth does not exceed $1.32 million. Also, for the business, there are size standards for the business. And so under the DBE program, we utilize the SBA or Small Business Administration small business size standards. So the U.S. Small Business Administration publishes size standards for all businesses to determine if they meet a small business standard. Now, under the DBE program also has a cap. So a good example is that when you look at a construction firm or a general construction firm under the SBA small business size standards, that size standard is something like about $35 or $36 million. But the DBE program has a cap of $26.29 million. So again, under the DBE program, your firm cannot exceed $26.29 million in annual gross receipts in order to qualify for the DBE program. Next slide. Additionally, applicants who apply for DBE certification must provide proof of their citizenship status. And so these are the documents that are required to provide us with the proof of your citizenship status. The DBE program puts the entire burden of proof on the applicant owner, meaning that when you apply for DBE certification, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 to 35 different documents that you must provide to us. You must provide your personal tax returns, company tax returns, and a whole list of other documents that you must provide for DBE certification. If you refuse to provide those documents or fail to provide those documents, then your application cannot be processed and you'll be turned down for certification. Additionally, the DBE program has a home state first rule. That home state first rule basically says that in order for you to apply for DBE certification in another state, you must be certified in your home state. And your home state is considered the state that your company is located in and where you conduct most of your business activity. So once you get your DB certification in your home state, then you're able to apply for DB certification outside of the state with other agencies. Next slide. So once you're DB certified, we provide a directory on our website of all DBE certified firms as well as all SWAM certified firms. And with the DBE certification, as long as your company is listed in that DBE directory, companies can use your firm for DBE credit on projects and contracts. We also provide, as I mentioned earlier, some technical and management assistance to help you understand the state's procurement process, to help you identify where potential opportunities are, and to help you identify potential prime contractors and how to market and promote yourself to those prime contractors. Next slide. So the certification steps, again, I'm providing a link to our certification portal, because when you apply for certification, all of your documents must be submitted through this portal because it's a secure portal. You don't want to be sending us your tax returns and other critical documents through email because it's not secure. So this is the link to that portal to apply for both the SWAM and the DB certification. And if you have any questions, I always advise everybody, please call me first before you actually start the certification process so we can discuss your particular business and some of the specific requirements that relate to your particular kind of business. Next slide. Okay, so I'm available for questions when they're available. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for going through this and doing this virtually. I agree with what Dallas said earlier. I'd much prefer to be peppered with questions in person than in a virtual format. So with that, I think we're going to see if there's any questions on the chat. I was reviewing it. There are some questions that were answered by Haley in the room with regard to the PowerPoints will be available shortly. The same with contact information for those who have spoken. I know some people, this does not replace, as I just mentioned, this does not replace meetings in person and meetings, one-on-one meetings. I know I can speak for VPRA. We're happy to take those meetings as long as my procurement officer says we're not in procurement, as long as he allows me to. I would think the other agencies would feel the same. So again, this does not replace it, but we think it's good to do this at least once a year to let the industry know what projects, initiatives are out there coming down the pike, so you can plan accordingly on how to respond to them in the future. So with that, Haley, I'm going to turn it over to you in a second. I know there's a question that'll come up because it comes up in all of our meetings, and Kate referred to it earlier with regard to Longbridge and the procurement method. Again, as she said, we're going to have a request for industry comment we're going to put out this spring and summer because there's a lot of questions about what type of procurement it should be. Should it, and not only with regard to design build, seeing other type of alternatives, but also how many packages should it be. So we'll be reaching out, we'll be putting out on VPRA's website a formal request for industry comment, request for information, same thing. Later this spring and summer, I mentioned Charlene's name, she'll be involved in it. I also want to mention another name, John Carney is coming on board later in March to be our Director of Engineering and Construction. So he'll be working with Charlene and Kate and Fayed, folks who have been working on Longbridge and who will be working on Longbridge. We'll be putting that out. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more communications with the industry. Again, this is just another touch point with y'all. So with that, looking at the chat, I'm not sure if there's any questions that haven't been answered. There are a few? Okay.
All right. So as Michael mentioned, the slides and the recording will be shared post-event, as well as a list of participants who were here today who opted into sharing their contact information. We do have a few questions in the chat that I was not able to answer by myself, so we will field these to our panelists today.
So what are the opportunities for right-of-way appraisals and appraisal reviews? That came through, I believe, during the VRE presentation.
So they were kind of hinting that maybe VRE should take the first shot if you want, Richard, Dallas, or others. I'll be happy to add on if you some comments too.
Hi, this is Christine Hefner with VRE. We do, through our general planning consulting contract, include real estate services as part of the scope of that contract, and that would include not only appraisals and appraisal reviews, but also survey, environmental site assessments, all of the necessary due diligence that we would complete as part of our real estate acquisition activities.
Directed to VRE, any timing on the RFPs that you presented today?
Also the VRE.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, is there any timing on the RFPs that you presented today?
Okay, I will turn that over to Dallas, and he can speak to that.
Thanks, Kristen. So the questions about RFPs about specific projects, as I understand. Some of those were covered by myself and some by Kristen. I will offer that the RFP for the most recent one, the most immediate upcoming, will be an RFP for construction management services for the Manassas Park parking garage, and that will be within, I would say, the next 90 days or so. We're looking at, we have board approval questions and all the things we have to go through for that and assembling documents. So Manassas Park is one that is imminent. Other RFPs within, I would say, by the time of this next interview, so within the next year, there are a few that we would anticipate. One was this one here. The other would be Crystal City Station Construction Management and/or Crystal City CMGC, which is technically an RFQ, not an RFP. Others would include potentially Alexandria CMGC that might be interested to folks, which is technically also not an RFP. Those are the ones I can name. If there are other specific projects, specific questions, please reach out to the project manager. Take a look at the schedule on the website as well, and feel free to reach out to myself or the PMs.
All right, and this one is directed to Richard. Is it possible to qualify for DBE but not for SWAM?
Richard, just want to make sure you're.
Yes, it's possible to qualify for, actually it goes both ways. You can qualify for SWAM and not qualify for DBE. Likewise, you could qualify for DBE and not qualify for SWAM.
Thank you. Will there be an established SWAM and DBE goal for the procurements mentioned today?
I think that's probably to us.
Yeah. I mean, for VPRA, I can't share them at this time. You know, we will be committed to making sure our primes and subcontracts have opportunities on there. I just can't share a number at this time.
Someone is a safety supplier, PPE, safety vests, hard hats. Will there be opportunities available for us to supply safety equipment like these for these projects?
I believe the answer is yes. We are standing up a safety position at VPRA. That will be working with John for those materials and PPE. I don't want to speak for the others, but that is something that we know as VPRA, we are standing up our real estate section headed by Jeremy Latimer that we know, and as a new fledgling agency, we will be acquiring those materials, yes.
For similar scope to VREs.
Can you ask that again? I think I didn't mute the button quick enough.
All right, so this is directed to Melissa Myers. Does DRPT use your GPC for similar scope to VRE?
I'm sorry, ask me that again.
Does DRPT use your GPC for similar scope to VRE?
I don't know. I've actually, to be honest with you, never seen the scope from VRE. So if I'm understanding the question, and maybe Emily, did you raise your hand?
Yes. So I expect that it's similar, and I would like to reach out to Christine Hefner after the meeting to just take a look, and I'd be better equipped to answer that question.
Thank you, Emily.
Sure.
All right, I think this might be directed to Richard. What is the best way to keep track of projects and how DBE can get involved in these projects?
Actually might be panel-wide.
Yeah, it probably would be panel-wide because, again, I think several of you have mentioned about how you advertise your opportunities, and certainly everybody mentioned EVA or EVA. So that might be a better question for some of you all.
Well, at VPRA, we plan to track the projects. We do have project profile information pages on our website and or links to our website, and we'll be instituting more up-to-date version of that as our projects mature.
And until our website's up to date, there is my email, John Kostinick. As long as you can spell my last name and you spell out Virginia, you'll be able to find me. So please email me with any questions until I update our procurement website.
And this is Melissa for DRPT, and like I said previously, that all of our RFPs and any type of procurement that we do is always advertised in EVA. So you can, I believe, search by our agency, or when we put our opportunities into EVA, it is based on commodity codes. So just make sure your commodity codes are up to date. And what that means basically is if you are a consultant for rail, I think there's a commodity code specific for that. And that would probably most likely be one of the commodity codes we would use. So just keep a lookout into EVA. Everything is advertised into EVA for DRPT.
Thanks, Melissa.
I'm sorry, Richard, if you want to go first, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in talking and mentioning EVA and the commodity codes. So again, when you go into EVA, the commodity codes that you put into EVA are the NIGP codes. And one of the things that I do notice frequently is that small businesses, when they apply for certification with us, a lot of times they put in the wrong codes. So you will have to be careful and spend some time with that NIGP code directory to make sure that when you click on, a good example is rail. So if you click on, if you go to the NIGP code directory and you type in a keyword and just say rail, it's going to bring up railroad tracks, which is the steel. It may bring up railroad equipment. And so you really do have to spend time to make sure you're clicking on the right code that relates to consulting work or engineering work or construction work, as opposed to manufacturing or supply or materials. So again, you can give me a call and we can talk through that to make sure that you are putting in the right codes into that system. That's it.
Thanks, Richard.
Can you provide any guidance regarding conflict of interest with other procurements on the program management procurement?
Can you ask that one more time?
Can you provide any guidance regarding conflict of interest with other procurements on the program management procurement?
I'm happy to field that. This is Kristen from VRE. Yes, that is something that we are currently working through on our side, is developing that conflict of interest policy, which of course will be in the solicitation. At this point, we think we'll be looking at it on a case-by-case basis. So I also wanted to touch very briefly on the last question about DBE. When we have those pre-proposal, pre-bid meetings, in order to kind of connect DBEs with primes, we do ask everyone to register for the meeting. We post on our website a list of those that did register, and we'll ask them to denote whether they were a DBE or SWAM. So that is a helpful way of how primes can find their DBE subs and SWAM subs through the process. But as far as going back to conflict of interest, we're working on that, and as soon as we have more information that we can share as part of that solicitation, we absolutely will. We're cognizant of the fact that it's different from perhaps a GPC or a GEC.
And Kristen, same with us. We're doing our procurement policies, and conflict of interest will be part of that. So we're to share as we get them adopted.
Yes, and VPRA will also be having a program management procurement out within the next year or so. And again, as John said, we'll try to be as clear as possible in our procurement policy that's coming out in the next couple months.
All right. As a DBE business, how do we partner with prime contractors for these various projects?
There's no perfect answer to that. I mean, it's, communications, knowing some of the players, knowing who's out there, still in 2022, whether you're a large or a small company, the whole process is not always shared or known in the community. For me, I've said a few times, we're still writing our policies, so people don't know that, but it may be the same with some of the primes that may be on projects. Do you have at least a relationship and know who some of the players are? If a RFP or anything has a pre-proposal, go find out who attended. Make sure you know everybody that's on that list, whether it's another sub or the prime. Just make sure you have those relationships. So there's just no perfect answer, but communications don't hurt.
Yeah, I would agree. There's no one particular way of getting to build relationships with the prime contractors. There are some things that you can do and try to do on a consistent basis. Just as Kirsten mentioned, you go to those pre-proposal meetings, you look on the websites to see who's going to be bidding on these different projects or who's signed up on the plan holders list, and you reach out early and often to these prime contractors. Understand that the DBE program is a subcontracting program. So all DBE opportunities, the requirement for DBE participation is placed on the prime contractor to meet a specific goal on that contract. So you have to find out who the potential prime contractors are going to be. And one way of doing that is to attend the pre-proposal or pre-bid meetings and or whatever information you can get out of EVA and the other websites to find out who the potential prime contractors are going to be, and then reach out to those prime contractors to let them know what your services are and what your capabilities are.
All right, this one is for Emily. Who are the incumbents on the GPC rail contract? Is that something we share? So sure, and they are, these are the primes that I can mention. So HDR is on our bench as a prime. Moffitt Nickel is on our bench as a prime, and so is Baker. And then there are many, many other firms who are subs to those three teams, to those three primes. And I think Melissa Myers can provide more detail on that if anybody's interested. It may be on our website. Melissa.
Yeah, so yeah, those are our three primes, and you of course can contact me if you want to know who the subs are. And that contract does expire July 17th of 2022. And that's why, of course, we're putting out our new GPC April 1st.
All right. How do each of these groups respectively put together their RFPs independently, outside consultants, other.
We do ours independently. That's for DRPT rail.
I will say at VPRA, it depends on what the actual procurement is, but our program managers sometimes may help with a certain type of procurement. Other ones, if there is a potential conflict of interest, they might not. It sometimes depends on what the actual bid is. But we generally handle them in-house with some assistance from our program manager, again, depending on the situation.
All right, this is for Kate. Will the Long Bridge project include PLA?
The Long Bridge project include project labor agreements? Very likely, yes. I will state that Executive Director DJ Sadler, who's with us here today, we've met with some folks. We plan on them including project labor agreements. Sorry, Kate, didn't mean to jump in and answer your question, but DJ was nodding and we've met with some folks on it, so she's giving a thumbs up.
Yeah, this is DJ. Let me just add to that we think they're critical for not only the safety of the project, but also the assurance of staff. I mean, we're in a situation where there's so much money being thrown at infrastructure, and I think there's going to be a strong fight for talent. And having those labor agreements in place will allow us to have staff certainty that's likely not going to be there otherwise. So, yes, Mike said it's very likely, and I will strongly agree with him.
Will there be matchmaking sessions during the pre-proposal meetings to facilitate teaming with DBE Swam on these major opportunities?
I can speak on at least on the larger projects like Long Bridge. I would like a pre-proposal meeting. And that question came up early, and again, that's another great reason why to do these in person. If we can, as we all know, when we planned this a couple months ago, we were in the middle of the Omicron wave. So hopefully in the future, if things go well with the pandemic, we'll be able to hold those meetings in person, at least definitely for the larger, and John K is my procurement guy, nodding his head, so at least for the larger projects. I don't want to speak for the others, though. Speak for the other panelists, sorry, the other agencies.
This is Melissa with DRPT. So just as Michael had stated, pre-COVID, we always encourage networking after the mandatory or optional pre-proposals that we had. Unfortunately, due to that, we haven't had that opportunity, but hopefully moving forward, we'll be back in person for those. So there'll be a lot of that opportunity to network and get to meet the primes after those proposals, optional or mandatory pre-proposal meetings. Thank you.
Will there be opportunities to work with safety directors and contractors on their safety supplies? And I think that was already answered. And then the last one, how does VPRA and other groups anticipate the recently passed Infrastructure Investment Act? How will it impact project activity and properly leveraging the funds to deliver transportation rail improvement projects?
I'll be happy to answer that. As I mentioned early on in the presentation, the agreements with entities such as CSX actually allows us to build a 4-track corridor, really from Washington, D.C. to Richmond, except for a town called Ashland. And we are looking at the IIJA, and I also talked about the Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects we have laid out with CSX. We are looking at the IIJA as a way to expedite some of those projects, some of those future phases, Phase 3, 4, 5, and 6, actually. So that's one way we're looking at the IIJA grants and other opportunities too throughout the Commonwealth, and not even just on the projects we mentioned. There's other projects that are coming down the pike in the Richmond area. There could be a lot of projects coming down the pike in the Richmond area with regard to planning. There's a lot of projects that we didn't even have time to get to today, all throughout the Commonwealth. So yeah, we're looking to expedite projects we already have on our books, and also tap the IIJ funding to expedite some planning and future projects. Happy to let others answer that as well.
So who was speaking right now was Michael McLaughlin, the Chief Operating Officer at VPRA.
Yes.
Question. I think that's it.
So Haley said that's the end of the questions. We know full well that these questions are going to continue not just today, but in future days and months and years to come. So I know I can speak for VPRA. We welcome all of you reaching out to us. And if you have other questions, happy to answer them in person, on the phone, or other means. So with that, happy to hand off to anyone else. Emily, if you have any comments for DRPT or Rich or anyone else.
This is Emily Stock, Chief of Rail for DRPT. I appreciate everybody joining us, participating today, and I also appreciate partner agencies. I look forward to our continued work together with VRE, with Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, with Small Business Division. Thanks very much.
Thank you all.
Just want to thank everybody for attending today. Looking forward to doing this again and next year in person, and look forward to seeing everyone along the pike as we get these projects rolling. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Appreciate your participation today. We'll be talking to you in the future. Thank you.
All right. Now, how do I get out of here?